Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Terminology Leading Practices stream for SNOMED CT Expo 2024. Thanks very much to B2I for sponsoring the stream. My name's Andrew Atkinson. I'm the release manager of SNOMED International, and I'll be moderating today's session. All questions will be answered at the conclusion of the presentation. Online attendees, please use the Q&A buttons, type your questions to the presenter. On-site attendees, please use the microphones provided by our helpful volunteer. I'm now pleased to introduce Mark Zotter from B2I, who will be presenting from conception to consumption. Mark?
Hello, welcome everyone after the break. My name is Mark Zotter and I am from a company called B2I Healthcare, and we would like to present some cool stuff to you. Which is, no, not that way, this way. Yeah, which is going to be a case study we have done with a company called Cambio, which is an e-healthcare company that provides smart and reliable user-friendly solutions to and large regional EHR systems. Their main presence is in the Nordic and the UK areas, and they are really into trying to provide a better healthcare for patients. And we, as B2I, as a standard technology company, a healthcare technology company who provide expertise in data interoperability, semantic interoperability, we really try to enable clients like Cambio or basically anyone who is in the hospital care provider domain to author and maintain proper data standards and have these processes in place to enable better patient care. So this was a innovation project, a couple of innovation projects we have been involved in the last 2-3 years. And the main area was in Sweden regions and hospitals, primary care, specialist and inpatient care as well. The main purpose was to integrate most of our tooling into their tooling to have a better clinical information system, and the terminologies should be at the core. There will be at the core eventually. The main powerhouse terminology that we are aiming to use together is SNOMED CT, so especially the SNOMED CT Swedish edition, but many supporting standards need to be in place because SNOMED CT is not there yet, but I think it will be. And with this kind of project, I hope that we can make it there. The other goal was to have a standard access to these terminologies, and we were settled on the FHIR terminology service specification, especially the R4, because that is standardized, that is well known, and people should know about FHIR and use FHIR wherever it's possible. So that was one of the main goals. And eventually what they and us would like to achieve is a sustainable management of vendor-neutral health data that includes the patient data as well. It's vendor-neutral, so you can bring it anywhere in the world and supportable. It's more open to any customers, be it third-party or internal, so less vendor lock-in eventually, that you are able to bring your patient data and bring it over the world anywhere and use it as your actual data. So you own the data you have. So the conception part, because everything starts somewhere, and we are humans and we like to invent stuff. We invent terminology. We invented terminology to represent our thoughts in a well standardized way. And in order to achieve that, there needs to be a central authoring platform where you can actually do that, where you can maintain these thoughts, put them together into a single large ontology. Even if they are multiple ontologies, they eventually become a single large ontology. And from that, you should be able to create derivative content like value sets, concept maps, translate those to the various languages we have in humans, use these in OpenAIRE forms and queries to offer the option for the medical doctors to access these data in a very clear and intuitive way. And the other part was that we need some way to restrict access to this data in some parts of the hospitals, because some medical doctors might not need that much amount of data. There is a lot of data we try to produce here, and sometimes we need sharing options, sharing these things with someone who might not need the entire thing. So we need to restrict access to those. There will be runtime content mappings in this kind of managed in this central authoring platform. The standards we settled on initially was the Swedish edition of SNOMED CT. This is the primary terminology. The Swedish edition of ICD-10. You all know ICD-10 and you know why you need to use ICD-10, so that should be there. LOINC, as everyone also familiar with. ICF, there are various Swedish specific measure terminologies like the KVA and the MPU as well, and some local specialized code systems for, especially in the special and inpatient care, where there is not much of a standardization happened yet. So there need to be a way in this central authoring platform to provide the creation of local code systems, the very local, very specialized code systems. The OpenAir forms are a really cool match to these, because these offer you the ability to have a clinician use a template and describe the patient's diagnosis, summarize the visit of the patient, and you can use these templates and author them together with the terminology. So you have a side-by-side tool where you will be able to author the terminology and immediately see the results in the OpenAir template. So you will be able to benefit those two standards, I would say, in a single tool. These are used to form patient questionnaires, and mainly in the input fields. They will be value set bindings to bind to the various terminology components. They are trying to achieve 1,000 forms. It's really hard work. So maintaining all of these in a single platform, it's really a huge amount of forms. The output of this central authoring platform is going to be all of these together. So they are not thinking about standards like standard 1A and B and C, and it's an afterthought that you just try to put them together in the runtime environment. They are actually trying to make it a single archive, a single package that needs to be deployed to a pinpointed runtime environment. They'd like to use those data together, so that there's no just the SNOMED terminology and just ICD-10 and 10 forms in a separate environments. They are actually archiving and bundling up these together, so there's easy deployment in the pipeline. They want full control over who can access and what resources. So basically on a resource level, you need to have access to the various parts, what the output will contain, like a package manager, for example, what the output will be there, and which is the environment that is going to be the target. So for example, in one care provider environment, you might need SNOMED CT, ICF, and some measurements, because that's the requirement, and maybe 100 forms and some special queries, and that's going to be an output, and that's going to be put into the runtime environment and connected to the EHR system. Content syndication is a very interesting idea in this part, because when we think about syndication, we always think about terminology data syndication and not OpenAir or any kind of other standard syndication. So in this case, it will be really nice to see how we can actually move the OpenAir data in an automated way to the runtime environment. And I think this is what they really like to achieve here. And the selected runtime thing, I already mentioned that they try to pre-package this entire data together and deploy it to selected runtime environments. The runtime, when we actually reach the point of consumption, it's going to be a single runtime where a terminology server will serve via the FHIR specification, the terminology data. There is a OpenAir clinical data repository where the clinical data will be stored and handled. This is a mission critical system. There is no place for any kind of downtime, and high load is expected because this is kind of a system where each and every computer in the hospital will have access to, and you need to have basically zero downtime to access that. When this system dies, a patient can die. So it's really critical. Because of that, they don't just put that data into a production environment. They need to test it. They need integration. So there's a whole process where a development environment will be needed at the hospital level, and the test environment will be needed at the hospital level. They have either provided a regional IT personnel who will be assisting the medical doctors and the integration of this system at the hospital care provider level. So they will be able to offer 100% availability when they reach the point of production. The very interesting part is that we reached the consumption part. So eventually you deployed the whole package to the runtime system, and it's done. We are there, we could say. But unfortunately, life goes on, and our thoughts just can't keep us resting, I would say. And we develop new ideas, new standards, new concepts. SNOMED CT is evolving. So, and also our end users are thinking. They are actual beings who think, and they need some kind of way of giving those feedback, those thoughts back to these terminologies. Sometimes they invent something that we just basically don't know about, and a few years later, it turns out that this could have been a good point where they could share that idea with us earlier. So end user experience and how they collaboratively involved in this kind of process is really critical. And because terminologies are moving fast, we invent a really lot of stuff today. And based on that, the validity of the content, the integrity between these, especially when we have an output like that, where not just the standards, but the OpenAir forms, the queries and whatnot is all together, then we need to ensure that this data is good. It's really good. And of course, a user-friendly maintenance tool is something that needs to be in place, because otherwise the authors, the terminology maintainers will be unable to offer the option to author that data. So this is the whole idea in a single diagram, or I hope I could provide that to you, is that on the left, you see terminology standards on a global or national level. You may or may not have a terminology server in place in your country. You feed it with various kind of data like FHIR JSON formats, RF2, even HTML, text-based formats, anything really. And when it comes to the central authoring platform, it's either syndicated via standards we invent or just pulled in, imported in a normal way. And this data will be in this central authoring platform. The clinicians, the content maintainers here, they have access via the public internet using FHIR to this central authoring platform where they can provide feedback. OpenAir authoring tools can access this kind of data, and any kind of FHIR client can access this data, and you have the option to integrate. When it comes to the care providers, the actual runtime systems, we, again, either syndicate this kind of data or just deploy when we don't have the option to syndicate. The same terminology server software and the same authoring and authorization, same authentication and authorization will be in place, and there will be a closed intranet where patient devices, clinician computers, and FHIR clients can also access this data. And the access will be transparent. You will access the data the same way in the runtime environment as you do in the authoring environment. There will be no capability problems or anything like that. What we have learned is that this looks really cool, but the adoption of this kind of new technology is slow. It's really slow. It can take 5 to 10 years to invent something like this in the current era. Even if we have AI and anything, really it's just still slow. And in order to achieve or try to speed things up, you really need to have good documentation, good developer documentation to have the developer integrate with the standards we invented and have them understand not just the concepts of the standard, but the actual content, how they can interact with that, how they can leverage their benefits in their runtime systems. And the other is really the same terminology, server, software used in both the authoring and both at the distribution level. This makes it easy for a developer who acts in both sides because the API will be the same, the capabilities will be the same, and that's why we have decided to use FHIR because it's a well-known standard. It's going to be R4 on the authoring side and R4 on the distribution side. Even if we need to customize some parts of that, the standard will be there, and we can eventually reach that that point where we can have the same version, essentially. Audit trails are easy to share because the server will be the same, so you see the same historical representation of the data in both systems. And when you go browse them in the authoring environment and in the distribution, you will exactly see the same data. There won't be any kind of problems with that. And of course, as usual, using that, referential integrity checks, upgrades, and maintenance becomes easy. And even it can be really fast when we do that on the runtime level. When we really need a critical patch to be in place in the runtime system, we can do it immediately without any kind of downtime. The future work is really something we would like to keep our eyes on is the OpenAir stuff. I think it was this year when they decided to have a collaboration with, in the FHIR and the OpenAir organizations. They will try to have a way of representing data in OpenAir and FHIR. They will try to collaborate. So OpenAir is something I think will get traction over the years, and especially the template parts and the query parts that we are really interested about. And to make it even more better, we need to work on the output package validation, because that's something that really, I think, the core of this, because the output package that will get deployed to the runtime system, and if that's incorrect, then I think you want to know what can happen. And based on that, the deployment approval flow of this. So not just something that's a package is really good. We think it's good because the machine told us, but the approval flow, when it gets deployed, how and who will say that this is really the day that we are going to deploy this. That's really important. I think that was my talk.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was excellent. We don't have any online questions. So does anyone have any questions in the room? Okay,
Sure.
I have a quick question. What role do APIs play in facilitating interoperability between EHR solutions and standard management systems?
Well, because we use the same API in both the runtime, both the authoring environment, and basically everywhere, it's going to be the easiest thing in the world. You don't have to understand really what needs to happen on the medical or on the hospital level, because you will have the same opportunities, the same operations, the same access to the data. It's not going to be something like oh, I know how to do this when I work in Excel, but I don't know how to do this when I work with a terminology server. And we see this a lot, that people, Excel is easy. Excel is something we can work on. It's just, it's there. There are cells and we can put stuff in that. But when it comes to distribution and how medical doctor will use that, I'm not sure I want to be a patient where a doctor looks up a code in an Excel table. So that's something that's going to be really hard. What if Excel just, I don't know, doesn't work and doesn't find the thing you need? It's just, I think it's something that we need to keep inventing, is that the API we use should be everywhere, should be in, not just in the authoring side, but on the distribution side, and it shouldn't be just on the distribution side, but on the authoring side as well. So you will have the same way of not just representing the data, but accessing to that data.
Awesome. So it's basically standardization is
Yes.
the key for the
Yes.
APIs. Then. Thank you. And what about the slow adoption of the new technologies that you mentioned? Are there any good strategies for overcoming that?
Well, we are trying. Let's just keep trying, I would say. Well, we are humans, so it's really hard to say that you need to convince someone who that this is something they really need, and then they work with Excel or something that was working for them. It might not be beneficial to move away from that now, but I think we need a way of training people, training us on how to convince them to use our standards, use our software we develop, and use anything we invent here. So it's not something just, I don't know, I think it's a lot of beers eventually at the end. It's just, you need to really think with their heads and understand how they feel about that, how they feel about their work. And eventually, I think they will realize that, yes, this is what we need, but it's going to be still slow. I don't think we can speed this up to the level of an AI or something that we have these days. So yeah, it's going to be slow. It could be a bit faster though.
Can only hope.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Oh, do you want to come and
Apologies, I came in late. What was your reasoning for selecting OpenAIRE? What were the key benefits that you felt it delivered?
Yeah, that's a good question. Cambio was really about openness and how they don't want to lock into a specific vendor of using an EHR. And OpenAIRE is an open standard. So someone is basically like, is the fire of EHRs, I would say. So when you use the R-type modeling and basically develop the forms and templates, and the data that comes out of that and the bindings of the patient data can be ported to another vendor implementation that uses the same OpenAIRE standard. And it's mainly about portability. So it's not something that's, I'm not that familiar with OpenAIRE, so I'm not a clinician who work or developer that work directly with OpenAIRE, but based on what I get from the message is OpenAIRE is really the fire of the EHRs. We still think in the hospital level. We have a hospital and we just protect our data. That it's, yeah, we have a patient who, I don't know, was ill, and that was the data, but I still don't get, why do we have to protect that this way? Why do we have to really protect this? Why can't we just share the data, at least with the patient, and have the patient own the data? And if he goes to China, he will be able to use that data and represent his medical history in that country without any kind of issues. We have this in Hungary as well. So if I go to, I don't know, somewhere else, my data is just don't there. I'm not even exist in the medical records if I go to other countries. I can use my phone to show them that I don't know, broke my ankle 2 years ago or something like that. But that's just, I could write anything on a paper. It's just no proof of that.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Mark. Really appreciate it. And with that, we're going to conclude the session. Online delegates, you can stay here for the next presentation in the stream or access another session through the events lobby. Everyone on site, you can choose to stay or go. It's up to you. Thanks very much.